Tragedies in the world of entertainment are notorious and abundant. In this news cycle, I want to talk to you about the last and tortuous days of celebrities. To delve into that abyss that disintegrated them and to deeply understand what their autopsies could reveal. Today I want us to talk about an artist whose end was sadly announced. I want to talk about the mystery that was behind the death of one of Hollywood's great promises, and the last and painful challenges she knew how to face. Who was considered the sexiest man in the world? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. At some point, someone decided it was good to call the most irrelevant actors in the entertainment industry stars. This created a new category of being famous. It was no longer just about being someone recognized, but a star, as its name indicates. It would give the feeling of being above the rest, unreachable, but bathing everyone with its light. However, just as in the world of astronomy, it is possible to glimpse the light of stars that are actually already dead. In the world of entertainment, there are often stars who, although they continue to smile, have actually succumbed to the darkness. Welcome to the Morgue of the Stars, Part 1. If you're interested in this content, please write star below. If more than 200 people write star below and leave a like in this video. We're going to put together a second part of this content about the Morgue of the Famous, which is a new format we're testing on this channel. Let's begin. The most recurring phrase among Amy's acquaintances is that they saw it coming. They saw the sad ending that was closing in on the girl. They were able to witness firsthand how fate was taking hold of her, with nothing that could be done. At first, there were no major questions about the singer's constant self-destructive behavior. After she demonstrated with just 2 albums that she had arrived to make a mark, sell millions and fill stadiums, they decided to let her be. Nothing was important as long as she could keep signing contracts and standing in front of the public, who cheered her on with increasing emphasis. Only in the end, she couldn't even do that. The last concert given by Amy Winehouse was the most disastrous of her career, and some consider it the worst show in history. Yes, that same woman who had won 5 Grammys and who in a few months had risen higher than many celebrities with decades in the industry was suddenly labeled as the worst. That day, which occurred on June 18, 2011 in Belgrade, left a bitter taste in the mouths of all present, both audience and band and technicians. Amy couldn't perform a single song completely. She was erratic, not at all sure of herself, and even came close to falling on more than one occasion. It was obvious that vices and a disordered life had caught up with her again. Rumors that she was about to join the infamous 27 Club were spreading at the speed of light. Everyone claimed that Amy wouldn't make it to 28, just like what happened to other musical greats like Hendrix, Cohen, or Morrison. Indeed, the prophecy was fulfilled a few days later in London, when a series of factors combined to destabilize a spirit that was already broken. And to what factors? We refer to factors that were reflected in the artist's function certificate, which in fact had to be performed twice. There, the damage that bulimia had done to the girl surfaced. The harmful role of alcohol in her blood also became clear, and other issues were suggested that we will address shortly. After the fateful concert in Belgrade, the few producers who still trusted Amy crossed her off their schedules. There were fans who showed concern, but there were also many haters who flooded the networks with images of Amy in bad shape. Under those images, they mocked the woman with no compassion. 2 days later, Amy attended the presentation of another singer, whom she considered her artistic goddaughter. Again, she couldn't make the words flow, and her steps were clumsy. It was as if all the magic had left her. The 24th of June, hours before her tragic end, Amy received a visit from her mother. She couldn't hide that she was drunk. Her mother appeared worried, but didn't know what to do. Amy said goodbye with a hug and an "I love you," the last one they would hear her say. A little later, her doctor visited her, Amy. She wasn't at her best, but she told her that she had many projects ahead and believed that life still held happy adventures for her. It was a positive talk. Amidst so much anguish, the doctor left calmly, unaware that this was the typical calm before the storm. Around midnight, Amy bid farewell to her bodyguard. At 3 ante-meridiem, she messaged her friend. Her exact words were, "I'll be here forever, and you?" Afterwards, she stopped speaking to anyone. It was her own bodyguard who would find her hours later, lifeless and with several empty bottles around her. The emergency services couldn't do anything either. Quickly, the news escalated. There were tributes, farewells called by her followers, and many tears. That's where it started. We saw it coming. The addictions, problematic relationships, and ordeals he suffered. Because of those who saw her more as a money-making machine than as a person, the cocktail had been explosive. But beyond the media's morbid curiosity, the doctors had a priority. They needed to know what had caused Amy's cardiac arrest that had taken her away from the world of the living. The first report about her body, a toxicology report, revealed that there were no illegal substances in the artist's body at the time of death. But the level of alcohol in her blood was excessively high. More precisely, 416 milligrams of alcohol per deciliter of blood was found, which was enough to put her into a coma and depress her respiratory system. The coroner concluded that it was an accidental death. Alcoholism can cause liver diseases such as fatty liver and cirrhosis, heart diseases such as high blood pressure and heart enlargement, cancer of the mouth, throat, lung, esophagus, liver, colon and breast, osteoporosis and other bone damage, eye problems such as nystagmus or weakness and paralysis of the eye nerves, erectile dysfunction in men and menstrual problems in women, among other things. It was soon discovered that the doctor who had made the forensic report was not qualified for the job. And a new investigation was conducted in which, apart from the high amount of alcohol, other details were looked into. It was known, for example, that Amy had managed to detach herself from certain drugs and had managed to stay sober for a few weeks. She alternated between periods of abstinence and extreme consumption. This, according to professionals, had ended up being counterproductive. Abstinence had lowered the alcohol resistance in her body, so when she drank, as she did in previous times, Amy had pushed her body towards an imminent collapse. Alex Winehouse, Amy's older brother, made sure to point out that bulimia had also wreaked havoc on the singer, who had been greatly weakened by her eating disorders. However, it was later found that some professionals had recommended Amy undergo specific therapies. Therapies that are usually intended for those who have a borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a mental illness characterized by unstable emotions and impulsive behaviors. People with borderline personality disorder may have chaotic relationships and self-harm. Symptoms include abrupt mood swings, insecurity about their image, fear of abandonment, intense and inappropriate anger, feelings of dissociation, impulsive behaviors such as squandering money, having unprotected sex, or driving recklessly, self-harm such as cutting. Today, there are those who argue that this condition would have been decisive for Amy's delicate mental health. The Amy Winehouse Foundation was created after her death to prevent the effects of drug and alcohol abuse in young people. The idea, according to those who created it, is to try to prevent there being foreseen endings against which one cannot fight. Holding on to hope is their greatest initiative. That and the possibility of redemption, something Amy could not obtain. Something very similar to what happened to the person who occupies the next place in this video. Although Heath Ledger had already had small roles and had managed to stand out for his talent and perseverance, the truth is that he only fully established himself at 18 years old when he starred in 10 Things I Hate About You. Until then, the young man dreamed of fame, but immediately that desire turned into a nightmare. At an early age, Heath knew that being the center of attention was not what he liked most about the whole Hollywood world. He liked even less being treated like a hegemonic heartthrob. He wanted to be recognized for the way he engaged with his characters and his work. However, in the beginning, he was more noted for his ability to make the audience sigh than for his potential to evoke emotions. This feeling of not having control over his life began to obsess him, so much so that Heath began to lose his characteristic humor, becoming a rather serious and taciturn person. He couldn't help feeling uncomfortable every time his face appeared on a huge poster or every time he was interviewed. How could he feel again that this was his dream and that he was not just a puppet of producers and representatives? That question led him to live endless nights, to flirt with many vices, and to suffer from severe insomnia. To combat this, he began to take various medications, which in turn brought other collateral damage. Determined to prove himself as a serious actor, the man began choosing his roles with new criteria. Until in 2005 with Brokeback Mountain, the critics fell at his feet. It was his great revenge. On that set, he would meet who would later become the mother of his daughter. Many said then that at last, the actor was now going to settle down and was going to get his act together. Finally, he had everything he had wanted. But the good times didn't last long. Months later, videos of Heath at a party where cocaine was abundant were leaked. In the same hit, he said his girlfriend would be furious with him for his actions. Indeed, the couple fell apart. Guilt added to insomnia, and pills began to accumulate more and more in the actor's medicine cabinet. His obsession with singer-songwriter Nick Drake also deepened, a British musician who had died from an overdose due to the antidepressants he was taking to try to sleep. This had happened in 1974. Heath had always shown admiration and curiosity for this character, of whom he even made a short film. As a director, he attempted to adapt a novel that would later inspire the series The Queen's Gambit. But he remained tied to that which he loved and hated in equal parts, acting. Carrying his ever-present ghost, he took on the role of Batman's Joker, the Dark Knight, with his typical unique style. He spent weeks locked away writing a diary as if he were that villain. He dove into the character's madness, found him an aesthetic, a voice, a tone, a motivation beyond what the film's director Christopher Nolan had suggested. Ledger drew inspiration from A Clockwork Orange's protagonist and Sex Pistols' bassist Sid Vicious for his character construction. Did he want an anarchist psychopath? And he would achieve it with flying colors, although he would not get to see the final product. On the set of The Dark Knight, he was gruff and very immersed in his creation. He improvised and left everyone dismayed. He left receiving applause and knowing that when the movie premiered again, the spotlights would fall on him, trying not to go into crisis because of the impending press harassment. He fully immersed himself in his next project, a Terry Gilliam film, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. January 21st, 2008. Ledger spoke on the phone with relatives and friends. Everyone noticed him excited. Everyone asked him to be careful with the pills. The fact is that the 28-year-old actor was not in very good health. He had been dragging a pneumonia for months and coughed strongly when he got agitated. That he smoked only made things worse. The dawn received him without news. Again the hours became swampy and sleep shone. In his absence, Heath had mentioned that he missed his daughter. It is likely that he thought of her during those hours. He also frequently blamed himself for his mistakes. Therefore, it is also likely that he went over those situations that embarrassed or frustrated him 1,000 times in his head. We sensed that the desperation increased minute by minute until there were no more pills to take. Chronic insomnia can cause health problems such as increased risk of cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, and obesity. Respiratory problems like asthma. Increased risk of car accidents, mood problems, feelings of anxiety, depression or irritability, difficulty concentrating, paying attention, learning, and remembering. Performance issues, energy depletion, impact on work performance, making poor decisions, putting oneself in risky situations. At the same time, it should be considered that insomnia can be caused by genetic factors, age, stress, sex, medical conditions such as obesity and cardiovascular diseases, menopause. Sleep habits such as going to bed at different times of the night, poor sleep environment quality, watching television, using a computer or a mobile device in bed. Diana, his masseuse, wasn't alarmed when she arrived at 3 post-meridium and he didn't answer. She proceeded to call him on his cell phone and then on his landline. She sent him messages to remind him of the appointment. All in vain? Then yes, a bad feeling began to envelop the woman. That's why she turned to Teresa Solomon, the actor's housekeeper. Teresa arrived quickly, appearing more relaxed than Diana. She explained that sometimes the man would fall into a deep sleep, especially if he had another one of his bad bouts of insomnia. While explaining this, she opened the apartment door so that the masseuse could start setting up her work tools. Indeed, they found Ledger lying in his bed, Diana logically assuming what she had been told. Teresa continued with her things until she noticed that the man was too still. Moved by an impulse and a premonition that suddenly put her on alert, She approached to wake him up. As Ledger didn't react, she decided to touch his arm, and then she noticed that his skin was cold. Very cold. What would happen next always aroused and continues to arouse great controversy. In a similar situation, anyone would have chosen to call 911, and while she did, Diana first made another call. A call to another person also very well known in the world of celebrities, who was a very good friend of Ledger. The actress Mary-Kate Olsen, who you may remember for starring in many films with her twin sister. The masseuse told the girl that the man was not moving and that she didn't know what to do. Olsen was in California, but she ordered her private security company to go to the apartment. Later, Diana called her again. She now feared Heath might be dead. This time, she did go to 911 and her words were categorical. "Mr. Ledger is not breathing, please come." Following the operator's instructions, Diana performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation on the actor until a team of paramedics arrived. Amid the commotion, one question prevailed. What exactly had Ledger died of? The initial autopsy and toxicological examination took place on January 23rd. According to the report, the man died from acute intoxication due to the combined effects of oxycodone, hydrocodone, temazepam, alprazolam, diazepam, and doxylamine. In summary, he had been the victim of an accidental overdose. Self-medication can cause many health problems, including intoxication, allergies, dependence, antibiotic resistance, masking of diseases, organic damage, rebound effects, arrhythmias. That revelation opened a debate about the misuse of prescription drugs and mixing with other pills. The Drug Enforcement Agency also took action on the matter. It investigated 2 United States doctors who treated the actor, but both were exonerated. While the reports had been detailed, other doubts emerged. A theory that did not wait was the one that indicated that Ledger had taken his life deliberately, an idea that was dismissed by his inner circle. The other big question was why. The masseuse had called the twin, Olsen, in the first instance because she was on Ledger's cell phone as one of his most frequented contacts. Everything became more and more suspicious when Olsen asked federal investigators for immunity before answering questions about the actor's death. According to her lawyer, this was because she was afraid of being unfairly investigated. First, they wanted to know if she was involved with the drugs that had ended up killing Heath, then they wanted to know if they were more than friends. One way or another, what Olsen stated when she was questioned never officially came out. Ledger's Joker earned him a posthumous Oscar. This time, the actor didn't have to endure journalists pouncing on him. In response to the way the media rushed to find someone to blame for the tragic death, Heath's father said, "We shouldn't blame anyone, only him. I say it with a broken heart, he was the one who took all those pills. It's hard to accept, because I loved him deeply and was very proud of him." The man also led campaigns to prevent other young people from experiencing premature deaths, as his son did. In these talks, he emphasized the problems of self-medication, the risks of not taking care of mental health, and trying to run away from problems. Today, many are wondering how many other gems Ledger could have given us had he been able to overcome his torments. And what if he had listened to those who called him, begging him to be careful with the pills? Impossible to know how far he could have gone. The one who did manage to go very far and overcame several obstacles before the end came is the one who occupies the next spot in this video. And that brings our story full circle. After Dirty Dancing premiered in 1987, People magazine did not hesitate to name Patrick Swayze as the sexiest living actor. In those pages, they not only talked about the physical qualities of the person who would later be crowned with Ghost, but they also talked about him as a role model. The actor prided himself on eating well, exercising, and considering his body a true temple. This helped his esteem in the environment to grow excessively. And even though the man smoked up to 60 cigarettes a day, he was invited to many talks about the importance of staying away from vices. He was also a defender of animal life. One of his reflections about dogs is widely quoted on social networks today. "They said my house smelled like dogs, so I asked them if they knew what dogs smelled like." A dog's scent embodies gratitude, loyalty, nobility, affection, and unconditional love. And despite everything they've been through, they don't smell of resentment, so I feel blessed that my house smells like dogs. One way or another, Patrick had managed to relegate his darkest side, the one linked with the alcoholism that had triggered his father's death, for example. With flair and a strong personality, he had managed to keep the paparazzi away until 2008, when he turned 56. The start of that year marked a pivotal moment for the actor. During the celebrations, Patrick drank a glass of champagne, and instantly he felt like the liquid landed in his stomach, burning it as if it were lava. It wasn't the first time this had happened to him. The last few weeks he had been suffering from colic, constipation and cramps, but that had been too much. Used to showing strength, he smiled when someone asked him if he was okay. He discreetly emptied the drink in a corner and continued with the empty glass, hoping the burning sensation would fade. A few days later, he chose to see a doctor. The champagne incident and pains were now joined by his eyes turning yellowish. That was a bad sign. Patrick asked his wife to join him. Lisa and Patrick had been together since 1970. Back then, both were minors and had met because she was a dancer and he, the son of the owner of the Houston Dance Company. In 1975, they had gotten married before Patrick became a popular icon. Since then, they had never stopped being together and had supported each other in every project, but also in every difficult moment. And of course, it was difficult when the doctor told Patrick that what he had was pancreatic cancer, which had metastasized. At that moment, the actor turned and looked at his wife. He was aware that the survival rate of that disease was less than 12%. "I'm a dead man," he exclaimed. The attending professional put a hand on his shoulder and said he needed to put all his affairs in order. The sentence was imminent. In 6 months, they told him he would no longer be among the living. The pancreas is situated behind the stomach's lower part. It releases both the enzymes that help digest food and the hormones that help manage blood glucose. Cancer in this area begins as a proliferation of cells in this organ. It can cause pain, weight loss, jaundice, and other symptoms. When a cell has become cancerous, often the immune system is able to detect its anomaly and destroy it before it reproduces or spreads. Cancer cells can be completely eliminated, in which case the cancer never appears. Sometimes the cancer is the one that wins. Pancreatic cancer is almost never detected in its early stages, which is when the chances of curing it are greatest. After the diagnosis, there were a few hours of complete uncertainty. Then, Patrick sighed and said that he could only do one thing, overcome and fight, and that's what he did. After publicly announcing his health status, he underwent various treatments, including some very aggressive ones. He also attempted alternative therapies and easily adapted to any diet, when he outlived the months given to him as a deadline. Many looked at him as an extraordinary case. Lisa would recount time after that those weeks had been a complete hell, filled with pain, anguish and existential dilemmas, which had left Patrick exhausted, but not therefore surrendered. In a television interview, Swayze expressed fear, anger, and questioned why he was facing this challenge. Every time it seemed like his spirit was going to weaken, his eyes would fill with tears, and he would say out loud that he wanted to stay alive. He would even continue to make appearances in fiction, despite having been advised not to do so. He had never wanted to work with stunt doubles, which had cost him many blows and fractures. Having developed a high tolerance for pain, Patrick also didn't want to be replaced in the last days. He would come from each shoot exhausted, but with the conviction that he was getting stronger. However, the miracle did not occur. He defied statistics by lasting nearly 2 years and responded better than expected to experimental treatments he underwent. But it's equally true that along the way, he suffered several infections due to the damage his immune system had. The most serious of these infections was pneumonia. On September 14, 2009, he died at home after telling Lisa he loved her. The doctors were concise. Patrick's smoking, they said, could have helped the pancreatic cancer to develop. He also struggled with alcohol abuse at one point. It was speculated that he may have suffered a possible thrombosis in his last living minutes. It was also known that his wife injected him with painkillers to combat his severe pain. The press attempted to portray Elisa as neglecting Patrick and not caring for him in his final years. They even suggested that the woman might have over-medicated him, viewing him as a burden. There was never any evidence to substantiate any of these accusations. Patrick's case continues to move many while putting into perspective how important the pursuit of good habits is. It also makes us reflect on the significance for a country to continue betting on health studies. Cancer is currently fought with various treatments including surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, and hormonal therapy. The treatment depends on the type of cancer and its stage of advancement. Patrick himself once said, "Together we can create a world where having cancer does not mean living in fear and without hope." That concludes today's video, which is a new format we're testing on the channel as I mentioned. If you're interested in us continuing to make more videos in this style, write star below and we'll surely make a second part. Likewise, you can comment and request the morgue report of the celebrity you want below and we will include it in the next video. With nothing more to say, I say goodbye. I thank each and every member of this channel because thanks to them, I know we can make these videos. I'm leaving a few videos for you to continue watching. And I'm leaving goodbye.